I received a phone call from building security at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. "Sir, there are 3 people claiming to be your family at Unit 4B demanding entry and causing a disturbance. They're saying you live in a cramped studio and they want to stage an intervention about your lifestyle choices." I looked up at my penthouse view overlooking downtown Seattle, then at my security monitor showing my parents and sister outside the wrong door 2 floors below. I smiled coldly and reached for my phone. The truth about my family runs deeper than most people would believe. Growing up in Spokane, Washington, I was always the black sheep in the Jameson household. My parents, Robert and Patricia, built their entire identity around conventional success. Dad sold insurance policies for 37 years, while Mom managed a small accounting firm. They lived for PTA meetings, neighborhood barbecues, and the approval of people they barely knew. My sister Amanda became their golden child the moment she married Derek, a corporate lawyer, who drove a BMW and owned a house with white picket fencing. They celebrated every milestone in her life like a personal victory. Her wedding photos still dominated their living room mantel, positioned to catch every visitor's attention. I represented everything they feared about modern America. 3 years ago, I dropped out of business school during my senior year to chase what they called computer fantasies. The final confrontation happened during Christmas dinner when I announced my plans to move to Seattle and start a tech company focused on cloud security solutions. "Charlton, you're throwing away your future for some video game nonsense," Dad had said, cutting his turkey with more force than necessary. "Real men get real jobs with real paychecks and real benefits." Mom chimed in with her favorite refrain, "What will we tell the neighbors when they ask what our son does for work, that he plays with computers in his basement?" Amanda laughed from across the table. "At least Derek and I can provide grandchildren who won't be raised by parents living paycheck to paycheck." That night, they presented me with an ultimatum: abandon my entrepreneurial dreams, return to business school, and follow their prescribed path to respectability, or lose their financial support entirely. When I chose my dreams over their approval, they cut off all contact. Phone calls went unanswered. Emails bounced back. Birthday cards stopped arriving. For 3 years, I tried reaching out during holidays and family birthdays. Every attempt met with silence or outright rejection. Amanda blocked me on all social media platforms. Dad hung up whenever he heard my voice. Mom returned my letters unopened. This morning changed everything when I received a text from Amanda. "We're driving to Seattle today. Time for an intervention. We know you're struggling and living in some tiny dump. We're going to help you whether you want it or not." I tried calling them immediately, but their phones went straight to voicemail. My stomach dropped when I realized they must have gotten my address from an old lease application from my first apartment in Seattle. 3 years ago, I actually did live in a 400-square-foot studio in Unit 4B of this very building. The irony would have been funny if it weren't so perfectly predictable. They had no idea that their failure of a son now owned the entire 12-story building as an investment property. My cloud security startup had gone public 6 months ago, making me worth $42 million. I'd purchased this Capitol Hill building 8 months ago and converted the entire top floor into a custom penthouse while maintaining the lower 11 floors as upscale rental units and office space for my expanding company. But my family still pictured me in that cramped studio, probably eating ramen noodles and struggling to pay rent. Their intervention wasn't motivated by love or concern. They were coming to Seattle to feel superior, to prove that their conventional wisdom had been right all along. The building's security system alerted me when their silver Honda Accord pulled into the visitor parking area. I watched through multiple camera angles as Dad pointed at the building and laughed clearly, making jokes about my living situation to Mom and Amanda. "Look at this dump he's living in now," I heard him say through the audio feed. 12 stories of low-income housing. We should have intervened sooner. Watching my family approach the wrong door felt like witnessing a perfectly choreographed disaster. They marched toward Unit 4B with the confidence of people who believed they were about to save someone from themselves. Dad carried a folder of what looked like job applications from Spokane insurance companies. Mom clutched a Target bag filled with care packages, instant ramen generic soap discount store clothing still bearing clearance tags. Amanda had her phone out, clearly planning to document my pathetic living conditions for her social media followers. She'd probably already crafted the perfect caption about tough love and family responsibility. Through my security cameras, I watched Dad knock aggressively on Sarah's door. Sarah Martinez was a 24-year-old PhD student in environmental science who'd been renting 4B for 2 years. She was quiet, respectful, and always paid her rent early. She certainly didn't deserve what was about to happen. When Sarah opened her door, confusion spread across her face as 3 strangers pushed past her into her apartment. Through the audio feed, I heard Dad's booming voice, "Honey, you don't have to lie for him. We're his family. We know he's been hiding his situation from us." Mom immediately began photographing Sarah's modest apartment with her phone. "Look at this kitchen. It's smaller than our closet. How do you even cook in here?" Sarah tried explaining that they had the wrong apartment, but Mom waved her off dismissively. "Sweetie, we understand you're trying to protect Charlton, but this intervention is necessary. We're not angry with you." Amanda started her Instagram live stream, speaking directly to her phone camera. "Hey everyone, I'm here in Seattle staging an intervention for my brother. This is what happens when you don't listen to family advice and make irresponsible life choices." The comments started flooding in immediately. Most of Amanda's followers had grown up with stories about her loser brother, who'd thrown away his college education for computer games. She'd cultivated an image as the responsible sibling who'd married well and made smart decisions. Dad began examining Sarah's environmental science textbooks scattered across her small desk. "Environmental science? More worthless liberal arts? No wonder you're both broke and living like this." Mom started unpacking her Target bag without permission, leaving packages of instant soup and generic toiletries on Sarah's kitchen counter. "We brought proper food and supplies. You kids can't live on fast food forever. This is what happens when parents don't teach financial responsibility." Sarah's distress became increasingly visible as strangers invaded her personal space and dismissed her attempts to clarify the situation. "Please, I really think you have the wrong apartment. I've never heard of anyone named Charlton living here." Amanda turned her livestream camera toward Sarah. "This is probably his girlfriend or roommate. Look at this place, guys. This is why education matters. This is why you listen to your parents." Dad started opening Sarah's refrigerator and examining its contents. "Look at this. Organic vegetables, fancy yogurt, expensive coffee. You're clearly overspending on luxuries you can't afford. No wonder there's no money left for proper housing." Mom began rearranging Sarah's furniture without asking. "This couch is positioned all wrong. You need to maximize space in a place this small. We'll help you organize everything properly." The live stream comments grew more supportive of Amanda's family intervention. Viewers praised their dedication to helping their struggling son and his misguided girlfriend. Amanda basked in the validation, periodically reading positive comments aloud. "See, this is what real family support looks like," Amanda announced to her phone. "Sometimes you have to get tough with people you love. We're completely renovating my brother's life today, starting with his living space." Sarah retreated toward her bathroom, clearly overwhelmed by the invasion. She pulled out her own phone and started texting frantically, probably reaching out to friends or her boyfriend for help. Through my penthouse security room, I felt my anger building with each passing minute. This wasn't intervention or tough love. This was emotional bullying disguised as family concern. They were terrorizing an innocent graduate student while broadcasting their actions to hundreds of social media followers. The situation escalated when Dad started going through Sarah's personal belongings, picking up framed photographs and examining her mail. Bills, bills, just like I expected. Charlton, wherever you're hiding, you need to face reality about your financial situation. Mom discovered Sarah's small collection of houseplants on the windowsill. These are just going to die in this environment. Plants need proper lighting and space. This is exactly the kind of impractical spending that keeps people poor. Amanda filmed everything, providing running commentary for her audience. We're going to turn this place around completely. My parents have 40 years of experience living within their means and making smart choices. I realized that my family hadn't come to Seattle because they missed me or wanted to rebuild our relationship. They'd driven 5 hours to feel superior to someone they assumed was struggling. Their intervention was really a victory lap disguised as concern. Sarah finally locked herself in her bathroom, and I could hear her crying through the audio feed. Her phone buzzed constantly as she texted someone for help. Meanwhile, my family continued rearranging her apartment and criticizing every aspect of her lifestyle. Dad started threatening to call the building management company to complain about the property conditions. If he only knew that I was the building management company. Amanda announced to her live stream that they were planning to force their way into other apartments to find Charlton and stage a proper intervention. Her followers encouraged this plan, suggesting they check every unit until they located their target. That's when I realized this had gone far enough. My family's behavior was traumatizing an innocent person and potentially putting other tenants at risk. My phone rang, showing a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, this is Officer Davis with Seattle Police. I'm calling about a disturbance at your building. My girlfriend Sarah Martinez says strangers have broken into her apartment and won't leave. She says you're the building owner, Officer Davis. Sarah's boyfriend was a cop, and he was on his way to arrest my family for breaking and entering. The irony of calling police on my own family wasn't lost on me, but their behavior had crossed every reasonable boundary." Through my security feeds, I watched Sarah's situation deteriorate. As my family's sense of entitlement grew more aggressive, Officer Davis had explained that he was off duty but responding to his girlfriend's emergency call. He'd be arriving with backup within 10 minutes, and he wanted to speak with me as the building owner before taking any action. I knew Davis from several charity events around Seattle. The Seattle Police Foundation had honored my company for our cybersecurity donations to help protect city databases. Davis had been there representing the Patrol Officers Union, and we'd had several conversations about technology and community safety. Meanwhile, my family's behavior reached new levels of invasiveness. Dad had started going through Sarah's bedroom, claiming he was looking for evidence of drug use or financial fraud. Mom was in the kitchen throwing away Sarah's organic food and replacing it with processed alternatives from her Target bag. This expensive organic nonsense is why young people can't afford proper housing, Mom declared to Amanda's live stream audience. We're teaching them about budgeting and priorities. Amanda directed her camera toward Sarah's closed bathroom door. We think Charlton might be hiding in there. This is typical behavior for someone avoiding responsibility. The live stream comments had grown uglier, with viewers suggesting increasingly invasive tactics for helping their struggling family member. Some recommended searching for drugs, others suggested calling social services, and many praised the family for their tough love approach. My phone buzzed with notifications from various building systems. Mrs. Chen from 4A had called the front desk about violent voices and crying coming from the apartment next door. Jake Williams from 4C, an Iraq veteran dealing with PTSD, had started having an anxiety attack triggered by the shouting and had requested that building security check on the situation. Marcus Thompson, My building security guard called my penthouse line directly. "Mr. Charlton, we've got a situation in 4B. 3 people claiming to be your family are harassing Miss Martinez. They're saying they're staging some kind of intervention. Should I call the police?" "The police are already en route, Marcus. Officer Davis is Sarah's boyfriend, and he's bringing backup. I'm coming down to handle this personally." "Sir, these people are claiming you live in 4B and that Miss Martinez is lying about the situation. They're demanding access to other units to look for you." That revelation hit me like cold water. My family was planning to terrorize other tenants in their search for me. Mrs. Chen was an 83-year-old widow whose husband had died in the building 5 years ago. Jake was struggling with combat trauma and couldn't handle unexpected confrontations. Several other units housed young families with small children. Through my security system, I could see the chaos spreading. Dad had started banging on Mrs. Chen's door demanding information about my whereabouts. Mom was in the hallway taking pictures of apartment numbers and building conditions to document Charlton's living situation for social media. Amanda's live stream had attracted over 1,000 viewers, many of whom were screenshotting and sharing clips across other social platforms. Local Facebook community groups were beginning to discuss the family intervention happening in Capitol Hill, with many residents expressing support for the parents' efforts to help their struggling son. The potential damage to my reputation and my company became clearer by the minute. Several of my business partners had texted me about social media posts mentioning my name in connection with family drama. My company's stock price had already dipped slightly as day traders reacted to the scattered social media mentions. Sarah's boyfriend had obviously briefed his backup officers about the situation because my security cameras showed 3 police cars arriving simultaneously. Officer Davis emerged from the first vehicle looking determined and professional. I made a decision that would change everything. Taking my private elevator down from the penthouse, I prepared to face my family for the first time in 3 years. But this wouldn't be the reunion they expected. When the elevator doors opened on the 4th floor, chaos greeted me. Dad was arguing with Marcus about building security policies. Mom was photographing apartment hallways while making disparaging comments about the low-income housing conditions. Amanda was live-streaming the entire scene describing their heroic efforts to save their brother from poverty and bad influences. Officer Davis stood in the hallway taking statements from other disturbed tenants. Mrs. Chen was visibly shaken, explaining how the shouting and banging had frightened her. Jake was struggling with anxiety, his hand shaking as he described how the unexpected confrontation had triggered flashbacks to combat situations. When my family saw me step off the elevator, their reactions revealed everything I needed to know about their true motivations. "There you are," Mom exclaimed triumphantly. "We've been looking everywhere for you in this maze of poverty." Dad pointed an accusatory finger. "Charlton, this is exactly what we predicted would happen. Look at this place. Look at how you're living." Amanda immediately turned her livestream camera toward me, providing commentary for her audience. "There he is, everyone. This is my brother who threw away his college education and abandoned his family for this, but Officer Davis stepped forward with a professional demeanor that surprised my family. Mr. Charlton, thank you for coming down. These people claim to be your family. Can you confirm their identity and help us resolve this situation?" My family looked confused by the officer's respectful tone. They'd expected to find me cowering in shame, not being treated with deference by law enforcement. "Officer Davis, these are indeed my parents, Robert and Patricia Jameson, and my sister Amanda Wilson. However, they're trespassing in my building and have been harassing my tenants for the past 2 hours." The word "my" hung in the air like a revelation that shifted everything. Dad laughed dismissively. "Your building, Charlton, stop embarrassing yourself in front of these people. This is exactly the kind of delusional thinking that got you into this mess. Officer Davis pulled out his tablet and showed my family the building ownership records he'd accessed through the police database. According to city records, Charlton Jameson is indeed the sole owner of this property. He purchased the building 8 months ago for $4.2 million. The silence that followed was deafening. Amanda's live stream audience watched as her confident commentary dissolved into shocked silence. The comments exploded with confusion and questions about what was really happening. Mom stared at the ownership documents on Officer Davis's tablet. That's impossible. He's been living in poverty. He dropped out of college. He doesn't have that kind of money. I pulled out my phone and showed them the building management app that controlled everything from elevator access to security cameras. This is how I've been watching you harass Sarah for the past 2 hours. Every moment has been recorded. The security footage played on my phone screen showing their forced entry into Sarah's apartment, their invasion of her privacy, and their plans to search other units. Amanda's own livestream provided additional evidence of their premeditated harassment. I live in the penthouse. I continued calmly. The entire top floor. I converted it myself after buying the building as an investment property. Dad grabbed my phone, staring at the security interface that showed multiple camera angles throughout the building. His face went pale as he realized the scope of what I'd built. "This has to be some kind of fraud," he said desperately. "There's no way you could afford any of this." Officer Davis consulted his notes. "Mr. Charlton, do you want to press charges for breaking and entering harassment and destruction of property? We have multiple witnesses and video evidence." Amanda's live stream exploded with comments as viewers realized they'd been watching 3 adults harass a graduate student while searching for a millionaire building owner who'd been watching their every move from his penthouse. The moment of truth had arrived, and my family finally understood that their intervention had been built on completely false assumptions about my life. The elevator ride to my penthouse felt like ascending through different layers of reality. My family stood in stunned silence as we rose past floors they'd assumed represented the height of my ambitions. Officer Davis accompanied us, his professional demeanor providing a stark contrast to my family's growing unease. Amanda had turned off her live stream, but not before her audience witnessed her confident narrative collapse in real time. The comments had shifted dramatically from support for her family's intervention to criticism of their invasive behavior toward an innocent graduate student. "This elevator requires a special key card," I explained as I swiped my access card for the penthouse level. "Only I have access to the top floor." Dad stared at the brass buttons, noting that the 12th floor was marked private residence. His insurance salesman mind was clearly trying to calculate the value of having an entire floor in a Capitol Hill building. When the elevator doors opened, my family stepped into a 4,000 square foot space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of downtown Seattle, Elliott Bay, and the Olympic Mountains. The late afternoon sunlight streamed through triple-pane glass, illuminating custom hardwood floors and contemporary furnishings that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Mom's hand went to her throat, a gesture I remembered from childhood whenever she encountered something that challenged her understanding of the world. "Charlton, how is this possible?" I led them through the main living area past my chef-quality kitchen with its granite countertops and professional-grade appliances. The open floor plan flowed seamlessly from entertainment space to dining area to a home office equipped with 6 large monitors displaying real-time financial data. I started Cloud Secure Solutions 3 years ago. I explained, settling into my desk chair and pulling up my company's public trading information on the main monitor. "We went public 6 months ago. Our stock has increased 47% since the initial offering." Officer Davis examined the business documentation I showed him, including SEC filings and quarterly reports that established my company's legitimacy and value. "Mr. Charlton, I apologize for any confusion, but we needed to verify the situation before determining how to proceed. Amanda sank into one of my leather chairs, staring at her phone screen where her live stream replay was already generating thousands of shares and comments. Her followers were demanding explanations for why she'd been harassing a graduate student while claiming to help her struggling brother. "But you never told us about any of this," Patricia said weakly. "We had no idea you were successful." I opened my email archives on one of the monitors showing dozens of messages I'd sent over the past 3 years. Birthday greetings, holiday cards, business updates, and repeated attempts to share my achievements with them. Every single message had been returned unread or had received hostile responses telling me to stop bothering them. I tried to maintain contact for 2 years, I said, scrolling through the evidence. Every phone call was hung up on. Every email was either ignored or returned with insults. Every attempt at reconciliation was met with demands that I abandon my career and return to Spokane to get a real job selling insurance like Dad. Officer Davis reviewed the email documentation, noting timestamps that showed my persistent efforts to maintain family relationships despite consistent rejection. These communications show a clear pattern of attempted contact followed by dismissal. Dad was standing by the window staring out at the Seattle skyline. The view from my penthouse included several landmark buildings worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The Space Needle was visible in the distance, along with the waterfront and ferry terminals that connected Seattle to the broader Pacific Northwest. "Your company," he said slowly. "What exactly does it do?" I pulled up CloudSecure's website on the main monitor showing our client list that included major corporations, government agencies, and international organizations. "We provide cybersecurity solutions for cloud-based data storage. Our software protects sensitive information for companies with millions of customers." The technical explanation meant nothing to Dad, but the client logos on our website clearly impressed him. Names he recognized from insurance industry partnerships, major banks, healthcare systems, and technology companies that employed thousands of people. Mom was examining my awards wall, which displayed recognition from business organizations, technology associations, and charitable foundations. Entrepreneur of the Year from the Seattle Chamber of Commerce. Innovation Award from the Pacific Northwest Technology Association. Community Leadership Recognition from the United Way of King County. "These awards," she whispered, touching the frames carefully. "We never knew about any of this." Amanda was dealing with her own crisis as her social media followers turned against her. Screenshots from her live stream were spreading across multiple platforms, accompanied by criticism of her family's behavior and questions about their true motivations for the intervention. "I need to make a statement," Amanda said, typing frantically on her phone. "People are saying terrible things about us. They're calling us entitled and abusive." Officer Davis had been taking notes throughout our conversation. "Mr. Charlton, I need to inform you that we've received additional complaints from your other tenants about the disturbance your family created. Mrs. Chen from 4A is particularly shaken, and the veteran in 4C required medical attention for anxiety." That information hit harder than any personal slight. My building wasn't just an investment property. It was home to people who deserved safety and peace in their living spaces. My family's actions had traumatized innocent residents who trusted me to maintain a secure environment. "What kind of medical attention?" I asked, concerned about Jake's well-being. Paramedics were called for an anxiety attack triggered by the loud arguing and door banging. He's stable now, but he was significantly distressed by what he described as aggressive voices in the hallway. Dad finally turned away from the windows. "We didn't know about any neighbors. We were just trying to help." "Help with what exactly?" I asked. "You assumed I was poor and struggling without any evidence. You broke into my tenant's apartment and terrorized her for hours. You planned to force your way into other units to continue your search." At what point was any of that helpful? The room fell silent as my family confronted the reality of their actions. They hadn't come to Seattle out of love or concern. They'd come to validate their belief that rejecting me had been the right choice. And when that validation required hurting innocent people, they'd been willing to pay that price. Officer Davis closed his notebook. Mr. Charlton, you have multiple options for how to proceed legally. The evidence clearly supports charges of breaking and entering harassment and filing false reports. Your family members could face both criminal and civil liability. Amanda looked up from her phone with tears in her eyes. Charlton, we made a mistake. We thought we were helping. Can't we just apologize and go home? I stood up and walked to the windows, looking down at the city I'd made my home. 3 years ago, I'd left Spokane with a laptop, a business plan, and hoped that my family might someday be proud of what I could accomplish. I'd built something meaningful and successful, but the people I'd wanted most to share it with had spent that time assuming I was failing. The question isn't what you can do to fix this, I said, finally. The question is what I'm going to do to protect the people who actually matter to me now. Officer Davis waited for my decision, his pen poised over his citation book. My family waited too, finally, understanding that they had no power in this situation and no right to demand forgiveness. Outside my windows, Seattle continued its daily rhythm of commerce, creativity, and community. Somewhere, 12 floors below, Sarah was probably still shaken from being invaded by strangers who'd dismissed her words and violated her space. Mrs. Chen was probably questioning whether her building was still safe. Jake was dealing with trauma symptoms triggered by my family's thoughtless aggression. The choice ahead would define what kind of person I'd become in my success and what kind of community I wanted to build. Officer Davis's radio crackled with updates from the building's ground floor. Additional patrol units had arrived after Amanda's false emergency call triggered a larger police response. The 911 dispatcher had classified her report as a potential hostage situation when she claimed I was holding my family against their will in an illegally occupied building. Mr. Charlton, Officer Davis said after receiving the radio update, your sister called 911 20 minutes ago, claiming you were detaining your family unlawfully. When dispatch checked property records and found you as the legitimate owner, they reclassified her call as a false emergency report. Amanda's face went white. I was scared. I thought something was wrong with Charlton's situation and I wanted help. Making a false emergency report is a misdemeanor offense that carries fines up to $5,000 and potential jail time, Officer Davis explained matter-of-factly. It diverts emergency resources from genuine crises. My phone buzzed with a call from Marcus, the building's security guard. Mr. Charlton, there's a news van outside and more family members just arrived, claiming they're here for an intervention. They're demanding access to the building. Through my security cameras, I could see Uncle Frank and Aunt Helen climbing out of their pickup truck. Uncle Frank was Dad's older brother, a retired Army sergeant who'd spent his post-military career believing that discipline and authority could solve any problem. Aunt Helen worked as a church secretary and had opinions about everyone else's moral failings. More family members, Officer Davis asked, noting the information in his report. My uncle and aunt from Spokane, I said, watching them march toward the building entrance with the same self-righteous determination my parents had displayed hours earlier. Someone must have called them for backup. Dad looked embarrassed. Patricia called them when we realized the situation was more complicated than we'd expected. We thought you might be in some kind of trouble and needed family support. On my security monitors, I could see Uncle Frank arguing with Marcus at the front desk, demanding immediate access to my penthouse. His military bearing and authoritative voice were clearly intimidating the security guard who was trained to handle typical tenant issues, not family confrontations. Amanda was frantically responding to social media comments on her phone. People are sharing screenshots of our live stream everywhere. They're calling us worst family ever and entitled monsters. Some people are saying they're going to boycott Dad's insurance business, That last part caught my attention. Dad's insurance agency in Spokane was a small operation that relied heavily on word-of-mouth referrals and community reputation. If the viral social media attention damaged his local standing, it could seriously impact his livelihood. Mom had been examining my business awards in silence, but she finally spoke up. "Charlton, we genuinely thought we were helping. When Amanda found your old address, we assumed you were still struggling. We never imagined you'd become so successful." "You never imagined it because you never bothered to find out," I replied. "For 3 years, you made assumptions about my life without seeking any actual information. You were more comfortable believing I'd failed than discovering I'd succeeded. My security system alerted me to activity on the ground floor. The news van belonged to Como 4 News, and a reporter was setting up for a live broadcast about the family intervention gone wrong that was trending on local social media. The story had apparently gained traction as an example of generational conflict and family dysfunction in the modern economy. Officer Davis received another radio update. "Mr. Charlton, I need to inform you that your uncle is downstairs claiming you're being held against your will by criminals who have stolen your identity. He's demanding that patrol officers conduct a welfare check. Uncle Frank's military training had taught him to escalate situations when initial approaches failed. If he couldn't gain access through normal channels, he'd create a scenario that required official intervention. Would you like me to bring them up here so we can resolve this situation comprehensively?" Officer Davis asked. "It might be more efficient than dealing with multiple separate incidents." I considered the options. Uncle Frank and Aunt Helen would continue causing disruptions until they were satisfied that I was safe and in control of my own situation. The news coverage would only intensify if the family drama continued playing out in public. Yes, bring them up. But I want it clearly understood that they're entering my private residence at my invitation and they can be removed at any time. Officer Davis radioed downstairs instructing the other officers to escort my uncle and aunt to the penthouse under police supervision, and make it clear that any further false reports or disruptive behavior will result in immediate arrest, he added. While we waited, I showed my family the broader scope of my business success. My investment portfolio included real estate holdings beyond just this building. Cloud Secure Solutions employed 47 people in Seattle and had partnerships with technology companies across the country. My personal net worth had grown to over $42 million, with most of that wealth tied to company stock that continued appreciating. "This is all legitimate?" Dad asked, studying the financial documentation I'd pulled up on my computer screens. "Every dollar is documented and reported to the IRS," I confirmed. "I pay more in annual taxes than you've probably earned in the last 5 years combined." When Uncle Frank and Aunt Helen stepped off the elevator, their confident demeanor immediately shifted to confusion. They'd expected to find me in crisis, possibly under the influence of drugs or being manipulated by criminals. Instead, they found me in a luxury penthouse discussing business matters with a police officer. "Charlton," Uncle Frank said uncertainly, "we came because Patricia said you were in trouble and needed family support." Aunt Helen was staring at my penthouse with obvious shock. "This place must cost more per month than most people make in a year." Officer Davis introduced himself professionally and explained the situation. My family had mistaken my former apartment for my current residence, had harassed my tenant for hours, and had made false emergency reports when confronted with evidence of their mistakes. "Are you saying Charlton owns this entire building?" Uncle Frank asked, his military directness cutting through the confusion. "According to all official records and documentation, yes," Officer Davis confirmed. "He's also the CEO of a publicly traded technology company worth several $100 million. Aunt Helen sat down heavily in one of my chairs. "But Patricia said you'd dropped out of college and were living in poverty." "I did leave college to start my company," I explained. "But that was 3 years ago. My family cut off all contact when I refused to abandon my business plans. They've had no information about my life since then, but they assumed the worst instead of asking. Uncle Frank's military training had taught him to gather intelligence before taking action. Why didn't you contact us when your parents weren't responding? We could have mediated. I pulled up emails I'd sent to Uncle Frank and Aunt Helen over the past 3 years, including wedding anniversary cards, Christmas greetings, and business updates that had all gone unanswered. I tried to maintain contact with the extended family, too. Every attempt was either ignored or redirected back to my parents, who made it clear I wasn't welcome until I came to my senses about my career. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. My family had collectively decided that cutting me off was easier than dealing with their disapproval of my choices. They'd maintained that position even when I'd tried to share good news and accomplishments. Amanda's phone buzzed constantly with notifications as her social media disaster continued spreading. Local news outlets were beginning to cover the story, and her live stream had been shared thousands of times with commentary about entitled family behavior. "We need to control this narrative," she said desperately. "People don't understand that we were trying to help." "Were you trying to help when you broke into Sarah's apartment?" I asked. "Were you trying to help when you planned to search other units? Were you trying to help when you terrorized an elderly woman and triggered a veteran's PTSD?" Uncle Frank had been quietly processing the situation, and his next question surprised everyone. "What do you need from us now, Charlton? How do we fix this?" It was the first time anyone in my family had asked what I needed, instead of telling me what they thought I should do. But before I could answer, my security system alerted me to new activity downstairs. More vehicles were arriving, and the situation was about to become much more complicated. The security monitors showed 3 additional cars pulling into the building's parking area. The first belonged to my business partner Marcus Chen, who'd apparently seen the news coverage and come to provide support. The second car carried my attorney Jennifer Walsh, whom I'd called earlier to advise me on potential legal actions. The third vehicle was another news van, this one from a local radio station that had been following the viral social media story. Uncle Frank noticed the new arrivals on my security screens. "This situation is getting out of control. We need to resolve it before it damages everyone involved." Amanda was having her own crisis, as her social media followers continued abandoning her. My follower count has dropped by 15% in the last hour. People are canceling partnerships and sponsorship deals. This is destroying my influence career. Officer Davis received a radio call informing him that building tenants were requesting updates about their safety. Mrs. Chen had called the front desk 3 times, asking whether the dangerous people had been removed from the building. Jake's girlfriend had arrived to take him to stay with relatives until the situation stabilized. "Mr. Charlton," Officer Davis said after ending his radio conversation, "I need to address the broader impact of this situation on your building's residents. Several tenants are considering breaking their leases due to security concerns. That possibility hit me harder than any personal insult from my family. These tenants had trusted me to provide a safe living environment, and my family's behavior had violated that trust. If they left because they no longer felt secure, I would have failed in my responsibilities as their landlord." My phone rang and I answered it to find Sarah on the line. "Charlton, I'm so sorry this happened. I tried to tell them they had the wrong apartment, but they wouldn't listen. My boyfriend says we can press charges if you want us to. Sarah, you have nothing to apologize for. You were assaulted in your own home by people who had no right to be there. Whatever you decide to do legally, I'll support completely." Dad overheard my conversation and looked stricken. "We weren't trying to assault anyone. We thought we were helping family. You broke into her apartment without permission," I said after ending the call. "You searched her belongings, rearranged her furniture, threw away her food, and refused to leave when she asked you to. The fact that you thought you were justified doesn't change what you actually did. Aunt Helen had been crying quietly, apparently overwhelmed by the scope of the situation. We never imagined it would escalate like this. We just wanted to support you through what we thought was a difficult time. Jennifer Walsh, my attorney, arrived via the elevator and immediately took control of the legal aspects of the situation. She'd brought comprehensive documentation about potential criminal and civil charges my family could face, including detailed explanations of Washington state laws regarding breaking and entering harassment and false reporting. Mr. Jameson. She addressed my father formally. You and your family members have committed several serious offenses today. Breaking and entering alone carries potential jail time and significant fines. Add harassment, property damage, and false emergency reports, and you're looking at substantial legal consequences. My business partner Marcus had a different concern. Charlton, the social media coverage is affecting our company's reputation. Some clients are expressing concerns about associating with personal drama, and our stock price has dropped 3% since this morning. That revelation forced me to confront the broader implications of my family's actions. Their behavior wasn't just affecting me personally. It was potentially damaging the livelihoods of 47 employees who depended on our company's success. Uncle Frank's military experience gave him a practical perspective. What would it take to resolve this situation in a way that minimizes ongoing damage to everyone involved? Jennifer Walsh consulted her legal documentation. From a criminal standpoint, Mr. Charlton would need to decide whether to press charges. From a civil standpoint, there are multiple victims who could file separate lawsuits. The graduate student who was harassed the other tenants who were disturbed and potentially the business for reputational damage. Amanda was still dealing with her social media crisis. People are finding Dad's insurance agency website and leaving negative reviews. They're calling for boycotts and posting screenshots from my live stream on every business review site. Dad looked genuinely panicked for the first time. My business depends on community trust. If this destroys my reputation in Spokane, I could lose everything I've worked for. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. My family had spent 3 years assuming I was a failure who would damage their social standing. Now, their attempt to rescue me was destroying their own reputations and threatening their financial security. Officer Davis had been monitoring radio communications about other disturbances around the city. Mr. Charlton, I need to inform you that this situation is requiring significant police resources. We have 4 patrol cars at your building, paramedics on standby for the veterans' ongoing anxiety issues and additional units responding to related calls. Marcus Chen pulled me aside for a private conversation. Charlton, our board of directors is concerned about this becoming a long-term distraction. They're asking whether you need to take a leave of absence to handle family issues. That suggestion felt like a punch to the stomach. I'd built Cloud Secure from nothing, taken it public, and grown it into a major success story in the Seattle tech community. The idea that my family's dysfunction could force me out of my own company was unbearable. Give me 15 minutes to resolve this, I told Marcus. Turning back to my family, I made a decision that would define our relationship forever. I'm going to give you one choice and one choice only. You can accept full responsibility for your actions. Today, make genuine amends to the people you've hurt and accept that our relationship will be permanently different. Or you can continue making excuses and face the full legal consequences of what you've done. Dad started to protest, but Uncle Frank cut him off. What would accepting responsibility look like specifically? Jennifer Walsh answered for me. Public apologies to the graduate student and affected tenants. Financial compensation for any damages or medical expenses. Formal retractions of all false social media posts. And binding agreements to avoid any future contact with Mr. Charlton's business operations or building tenants. Mom was crying now, finally understanding the magnitude of their mistakes. We just wanted to be part of your life again. We missed you, but we were too proud to admit we'd been wrong. You missed the son you wanted me to be, I replied. You never bothered to learn about the son I actually became. Amanda looked up from her phone with tears streaming down her face. My social media career is over. Everything I built is gone because of today. Your social media career was built on lies about your family relationships and judgments about my lifestyle, I said. Maybe it's time to build something real instead. Outside my penthouse windows, Seattle continued its daily rhythm while my family faced the consequences of their choices. The Space Needle stood tall against the skyline, a reminder that some structures survive and thrive because they're built on solid foundations rather than false assumptions. The time for excuses was over. The time for consequences had arrived. 6 months later, I stood in my penthouse kitchen preparing dinner for 12 people. The dining table was set with my best china and silverware, and the panoramic windows framed a sunset that painted Seattle's skyline in brilliant oranges and purples. This had become our monthly tradition, a gathering of the people who had chosen to be my family. Sarah Martinez sat at the breakfast bar sharing stories about her environmental science research while helping me arrange appetizers. She'd completed her PhD dissertation on urban sustainability, and I'd been proud to provide a character reference for her postdoctoral fellowship applications. Her boyfriend, Officer Davis, had become a close friend, and their engagement announcement last month had filled my penthouse with celebration. Mrs. Chen arrived carrying a covered dish that smelled incredible. At 84 years old, she'd appointed herself as the building's unofficial grandmother, and her homemade soup had nursed several tenants through winter illnesses. Charlton, you work too hard. You need someone to feed you properly. Jake Williams brought his girlfriend Amanda, not my sister, but a trauma counselor who'd helped him process his PTSD symptoms. Jake had become our building's volunteer security coordinator, using his military experience to help residents feel safer. His anxiety attacks had stopped completely once he found purpose in protecting others. My business partner Marcus Chen and his wife Jennifer had driven in from Bellevue with their twin daughters, who immediately claimed the window seats to watch boats crossing Elliott Bay. Cloud Secure Solutions had grown to 93 employees, and our stock price had reached record highs. The company culture we'd built emphasized family-friendly policies and community involvement. Dr. Amanda Reese. Jake's girlfriend brought updates about the trauma counseling center that my charitable foundation had helped establish. We'd provided both funding and cybersecurity services to protect confidential client records. We've helped over 200 veterans this year, Charlton. Your support made that possible. Officer Davis carried in a bottle of champagne to celebrate the completion of my newest project, converting the building's ground floor into subsidized housing for graduate students and young professionals. Sarah had been the first tenant, but now 12 units provided affordable housing in one of Seattle's most expensive neighborhoods. My attorney, Jennifer Walsh, arrived with her husband and teenage son, bringing legal documents about the new nonprofit organization I'd established. The Jameson Foundation would provide scholarships for first-generation college students pursuing careers in technology and environmental science. As we gathered around the dining table, I looked at the faces of people who had chosen to support my dreams rather than judge them. These relationships had developed organically through shared experiences, mutual respect, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Mrs. Chen raised her glass of sparkling cider. To Charlton, who shows us what real family looks like, the toast brought warm smiles and knowing glances around the table. Everyone here understood the story of my biological family's intervention attempt and how that day had crystallized my understanding of the difference between relatives and chosen family. My biological family had faced the consequences I'd outlined 6 months earlier. Dad's insurance business had indeed suffered from the viral social media coverage, forcing him into early retirement. Mom had quietly moved to Arizona to help her elderly sister, distancing herself from the Spokane community, where the family's reputation had been damaged. Amanda had abandoned her social media career and enrolled in community college to study social work, apparently inspired by genuine desire to help people rather than judge them. Uncle Frank and Aunt Helen had sent a letter 6 months ago, apologizing for their behavior and asking if reconciliation was possible. I'd responded with kindness, but forgiveness was possible. But rebuilding trust would require consistent effort over time. They'd respected my boundaries and hadn't pushed for immediate restoration of family relationships. The evening's conversation flowed naturally between personal updates, business discussions, and community news. Sarah described her research on how green building technologies could reduce urban heat islands. Jake shared funny stories about teaching self-defense classes to senior citizens. Marcus outlined our company's expansion plans into international markets. When dinner concluded, everyone helped with cleanup while sharing dessert and coffee. This was the kind of family environment I'd always craved: supportive, respectful, celebrating each other's successes without competition or judgment. As guests began departing around 9 o'clock, each person hugged me goodbye with genuine affection. Mrs. Chen pressed a container of leftover soup into my hands. For lunch tomorrow, so you don't eat those terrible energy bars, Jake and Amanda made plans to help with next weekend's building maintenance day when all tenants would gather to plant new flowers in the courtyard garden. Officer Davis and Sarah set a date for cake tasting at a bakery downtown as they planned their spring wedding. After everyone left, I stood alone in my penthouse looking out at the city lights that sparkled like diamonds across Seattle's landscape. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister Amanda. "Charlton, I've been in therapy for 6 months now. I understand why you cut contact with us. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm working to become a better person. I hope you're happy." I read the message twice, then set my phone aside without responding. Forgiveness was a process, not a single decision, and it required consistent demonstration of changed behavior over time. Amanda's therapy was a positive step, but rebuilding trust would take years of respectful boundaries and genuine personal growth on her part. The evening had reminded me of the most important lesson from my family's intervention attempt. Real family isn't defined by blood relationships or shared DNA. Real family consists of people who celebrate your successes, support you through failures, and treat you with respect even when they disagree with your choices. My biological family had spent 3 years assuming I was failing, and one day trying to destroy what I'd built, while my chosen family had spent years supporting my growth and defending my success. The difference wasn't subtle, it was transformational. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is protect the good relationships in your life from toxic people who demand access based on obligation rather than earning it through love and respect. Building boundaries isn't about rejecting people. It's about creating space for healthy relationships to flourish. Looking out at the Seattle skyline, I felt profound gratitude for the path my life had taken. The pain of family rejection had led me to build something better. A community of people who chose to love and support each other without conditions or expectations. My phone buzzed again, this time with a group text from Sarah, Jake, Mrs. Chen, and Officer Davis, thanking me for another wonderful dinner and sharing pictures from the evening. Their messages filled me with warmth that no biological family obligation could match. The greatest victory hadn't been proving my financial success to people who refused to see it. It had been recognizing that I'd already built the loving, supportive family I'd always wanted, just not with the people who shared my DNA. As I prepared for bed, I felt deep peace about the choices I'd made and the relationships I'd cultivated. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but I'd face them surrounded by people who genuinely cared about my happiness and success. Have you ever had to choose between toxic family members and your own well-being? Sometimes the hardest decision is recognizing that blood relationships aren't automatically healthy relationships. and that chosen family can provide the love and support that biological family sometimes cannot. I'd love to hear your thoughts about building healthy boundaries with difficult relatives while creating supportive communities with people who truly care about your growth. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others find it. Subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming family challenges and building successful relationships. Share this story with anyone who might benefit from hearing about chosen family and healthy boundaries. And comment below with your own experiences about navigating difficult family dynamics while staying true to your dreams and values. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps you remember that you deserve relationships built on respect, support, and genuine love. Sometimes the family you choose is the family that chooses you back, and that's not just, okay, it's beautiful.